You on? Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We appreciate all of you being here today for another guest lecturer from coming to the campus of Western Kentucky University. And I know that you'll enjoy today's presentation, and we're honored to have Mr. Crowell with us today. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce one special guest in the audience today. There are many, but one particular member of our Board of Regents who is also the head of the Meade County Rural Electric Cooperative, Mr. Burns Mercer. We're glad to have you on campus. We've had a number of very important speakers come to us at various times over the last couple of years or so, including John Clendenin, head of Bell South, the largest employer, I believe, in the South, as well as Thomas Melton, head of the St. Louis Federal Reserve, and now our special guest today, and others will follow. It's my honor to introduce to you today Craven Crowell, chairman of the Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA. We all know TVA from the ads that have been going lately. It's the one that where the guy rides a bicycle and keeps the electricity going in his home. I think you've all seen that one. He was appointed by President Clinton and confirmed by the United States Senate for a 9-year term that concludes in the year 2002. As chairman, he has overseen the restructuring of TVA's top management and emphasized the board's role in determining the policies and strategic direction of TVA. And those of you who have kept up with restructuring that's gone on in corporate America in the last few years, TVA maybe has done the most extensive restructuring of any of which I'm aware anyway across this country. Done an outstanding job and done it within the money, and I think as the ads brag, rates have not increased for 9 years. Isn't that correct? In the 1980s, he was a top official at TVA, vice president as a matter of fact, and a member of the agency's senior management team. And he recently marked his 12th anniversary of service with TVA. Beyond his leadership role at TVA, he serves on the boards of prominent national industry groups that include the Electric Power Research Institute, which is in Palo Alto, California, and the Nuclear Energy Institute. He serves on the boards of numerous community organizations across the valley, including the Downtown Organization of Knoxville, the Imes Nature Center of Knoxville, River Valley Partners of Chattanooga, and the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce. He also serves on the University of Tennessee Medical Center Liaison Committee and the David Lipscomb University Business Advisory Council, and he's a member of Leadership Knoxville in 1996. He's a native of Nashville. He's a graduate of David Lipscomb University in Nashville and served in the Marine Corps Reserve and the Naval Reserve. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to today's guest, Mr. Craven Crowell.
Thank you very much, Tom. I'm delighted to be on campus today, and I ended up being here because I had dinner with Burns in Knoxville one evening, and I was remarking to him that my son-in-law graduated from Western Kentucky. He said, well, you need to come up and visit our students. And so I've been looking forward to this occasion for some time. I thought what I might do to start off my presentation to you, as I look over the audience, it becomes quite evident to me, Tom, that some of these students are here probably on assignment. Otherwise, I can't imagine the crowd being this large. So what I thought I might do, since some of you are obviously taking notes, I thought I might get some of the facts about TVA out of the way so you could take any notes you wanted. And then I would like to spend a few minutes discussing deregulation of industries, particularly the electric utility industry. And then secondly, I'd like to talk to you a few minutes about the values that we have at TVA and how they relate to not only our corporation, but to the business community at large throughout the country. So let me start off by saying this. We have about 1,200 employees that work in Kentucky. They work at Paradise Fossil Plant near Drakesboro, which some of you are familiar with. There are about 540 employees there. When we built those first 2 units at that plant, they were the largest units in the world at the time they were built. We have 3 units operating there today. We have the Shawnee Fossil Plant with 420 employees near Paducah. And we also have that's also our Center for Emissions Research, which is a center to try to find ways to take the undesirable pollutants of coal-burning fossil fuels out of the air. We also have Land Between the Lakes, which is a 170,000-acre national recreation area near Golden Pond, Kentucky. It really contributes to about a $400 million a year tourist industry in that particular area and has 2.2 million visitors every year. Our total payroll in Kentucky from TVA is somewhere around $48 million. We make tax equivalent payments in lieu of taxes of some $15 million, just under $15 million a year. Now, some additional facts about TVA, not just related to Kentucky. Let me cover these. TVA is a federal corporation created by an act of Congress in 1933, and it was given the original mandate to control floods, navigation, and recreation along the Tennessee River, to provide for environmental research, economic development in the Tennessee Valley, and then also to produce electricity from its hydroelectric facilities. And during the span of time since '33, TVA has built 11 fossil plants, and we will have 5 nuclear operating units next year. In all, TVA, the power program at TVA, generates $5.4 billion a year in revenue. We are the largest producer of electricity in the United States. And we have 8 million people who live in our area, covers about 80,000 square miles, and we have 16,500 employees. Now, is that enough so far, you think? Now that I've covered those, let me talk for a minute about some subjects that are very, very important to me and things that I pay a lot of attention to. In 1992, the National Energy Policy Act was passed by Congress, and that changed the electric utility industry. It provided new opportunities for electric utilities. It also provided many new challenges for us. Under NEPA, as it's called, utilities will soon have the opportunity to expand their markets beyond their traditional reaches and beyond their traditional transmission networks. And their customers will have the option in the future to select their own power producers, and that obviously will be based on cost. Now let me take a few minutes to share my view of how deregulation will affect TVA and how it will affect the electric utility industry, starting with a look at how industries have fared that have been deregulated in the past. In general, if you look at all the corporations, all the industries that have been deregulated in the past, deregulation has never turned out to be precisely what people thought it was going to be when they started into it. But there's been one thing that's been absolutely consistent in every single case, and that is in deregulation, prices come down. In the airline industry, ticket prices went down something like 22%. Natural gas, about 33 cents, 33%. And telephone rates, long-distance telephone rates have gone down something in excess of 60% since deregulation. Now, how low will electric rates go? Don't know, but I certainly hope it's not 66% decrease. It'd be nice if we were closer to what happened in the airline industry. But the point is that there will be some decline and some erosion in what you'll be able to get for your product in a deregulated environment because of the competition, because of the market forces, because of the sophistication that comes about through technology for people to shop around for better prices. And this pressure will put tremendous, will make a tremendous challenge for companies like TVA in how to control our margins in a situation in which prices are coming down. Now, as a result of this, those who survive the initial shakeout in a deregulated climate will be those who are the most efficient and are trying to become even more efficient as time goes on. As the shakeout continues, the stronger companies will buy weaker ones. Non-traditional competitors like independent power producers will start putting pressure on the company to serve your market. And those who are left will shift with the industry to align with new opportunities that are produced by all this. Clearly, deregulation and free market competition will set into motion forces that we cannot control in this industry, but which we must contend with. The utilities who succeed in spite of competition will be those who turn market forces to their advantage, those who are innovative. And that will lead to a repeat of what's happened in earlier deregulations, where industries consolidate into 3 or 4 key groups. If you look at the telephone industry, it really sort of boils down to AT&T, MCI, and Sprint. If you look at the airlines, American Airlines, Delta, United, and maybe U.S. Air. I would expect deregulation in the electric utility industry to follow the same pattern and produce much of the same kind of result as time goes on. Only this time it won't be phone bills or airline tickets that are at stake, but it will be something far more fundamental and essential to our quality of life, and that's electricity. And only the most productive and resourceful producers of electricity will survive in the long term and will thrive. But those who do deliver more than electricity in the future will deliver things like information, communication, those kind of products along with the energy. In this way, as deregulation occurs in the electric utility industry, there'll be a convergence of the technologies. Computers, communications, content will all merge into one product. And we'll also see a convergence of competitors in the same manner. Now, none of this, as I'm talking about, is really rocket science. If you look at what's happened in deregulated industries, you can predict some things that are going to occur in what we're doing. Wire-based industries, those who have wires that go to the home and to the business, like utilities, cable companies, phone companies, will join forces to share in that product, and to share in the cost, and to share in the new creation of services and products along the line. Cable companies and phone companies, utility companies, computer companies, they'll all be in business together as time goes on. In fact, that's already happening. TCI, Microsoft, PG&E in California are now business partners, and Time Warner Cable Television is trying to get into the phone business in Memphis, Tennessee. So all these things are converging as time goes on. Now, while some in our industry are concerned about all the prospects of what this means, about the change that's going to occur, we at TVA are excited about it, and we plan to take advantage of the opportunities. Just in the past 2 years, we pulled out all the stops at TVA to ensure that no utility is better managed and does a better job in a competitive marketplace than we do. We've dramatically reduced personnel. 8 years ago, we had 34,000 employees. Today, we have 16,500. We've significantly improved our productivity and efficiency in every area. We've reduced our overhead and operations and maintenance costs dramatically and announced our intention to get out of the nuclear construction business, and in fact, get out of the construction business entirely. And we certainly have reduced our cost of debt by vigorously and aggressively refinancing whenever the opportunities presented themselves. In fact, this week we are announcing an international bond issue that will kick off in London on Friday. We've also accelerated our compliance with provisions of the Clean Air Act and made environmental quality a very important part of what we do. We've also launched an integrated resource planning process and a company-wide strategic development process. All this is a way to get information from the bottom up in the corporation. Now, this too is similar to what other companies have done. I'm not saying anything here that you couldn't go back and look at case studies in your business class and find other companies that have done the same thing. It's just in this particular case, deregulation is coming to the electric utility industry, which has been a monopoly in the past, which has been very unexciting in most cases, and has sort of plodded along over the years. And the customers no longer want monopolies. They want choice. They want opportunity to better their prices. On top of that, all this, we've just begun our 9th year without a rate increase. And that puts us in a great position to be competitive for the long term. Now that deregulation is here, TVA has made a fundamental commitment to compete and to succeed and be a leader in price, service, and environmental stewardship. In keeping with this commitment, we've developed 4 corporate goals for TVA. One is to be customer-driven, employee-sensitive, environmentally responsible, and growth-oriented. We intend to be in the forefront of change that occurs in the industry. We want to be an engine that drives the change and a model for defining the change. We'd much prefer to be out there and explain what it is we want than to wait for someone else to come and tell us how it's going to be. And yet, there are some things we're not going to change. And this is something I really have been interested in discussing with you since I first got the invitation to be with you. There are some things we're not going to change and some things we're not going to compromise. No matter what kind of zeal we have to seize the moment and to seize the opportunity, no matter how pressing the change is or how promising an opportunity we may see, we will not compromise the values of our corporation. Values like integrity, honesty, respect, and teamwork may not leap to mind immediately as you start thinking about the tools of change that are occurring in deregulation in this industry. But the more strategic planners I talk to, the more books I read from business leaders, and the further we chart our course into the future at TVA, the more I realize how necessary it is for companies and their employees to have a strong set of values. Values, I know, are hot topics. It is a hot topic now in the business community. And some people can easily dismiss that as simply, well, they used to be total quality management. There used to be management by objectives. There used to be fads such as this. Just recently there was the vision thing in a company. Now, if the 70s were the decade of do what you want, and the 80s were a decade of grab all you can get, I'm predicting that the decade we're in now will be a decade of a return to basic values and the way we do business with each other. Values may seem old-fashioned, but they're the very foundation of success, in my opinion, both personally and as a corporation. John Bryan, Jr., the chairman and CEO of Sara Lee, says it this way: the quality of personal values is the most important determinant of your success. And Robert Haas, the chairman and CEO of Levi Strauss, says that the alignment between organizational values and personal values is the key driver of corporate success. Professor Warren Schmidt of the University of Southern California and Professor Brian Posner of Santa Clara University put it this way: values are at the core of our personality, influencing the choices we make, the people we trust, the appeals we respond to, and the way we invest our time and energy. In turbulent times, they could give a sense of direction amid conflicting views and demands. If you listen to that, in turbulent times of change, times of dramatic change, values can give a sense of direction when nothing else can. And Ted Koppel of Nightline says, there's harmony and inner peace to be found in following a moral compass that points the same direction regardless of fashion or trend. A moral compass. That's a good analogy for values, in my opinion, because following a compass takes patience, determination, and courage. And most of all, it takes confidence in the direction that you're going. When people lose sight of their values, they're tempted to wander off course and, quite frankly, take shortcuts. In their eagerness to get results, they'll compromise times of great change. They sacrifice long-term success for short-term gain. Jack Welch, who's the chairman and CEO of General Electric, talks about the kind of manager who performs well financially but doesn't share the company's values. Welch says, this is the individual who typically forces performance out of people rather than inspiring them, is an autocrat, a big shot, is a tyrant. Too often, all of us have looked the other way with people like this. Give us the results, and everything else is fine. The bottom line is what's important. The short term is what's important. But Welch goes on to say that managers who don't share GE's values usually fail over the long haul, and I agree with that. At TVA, we think that keeping up with the challenges of deregulation and change, as stressful as that may be to our employees and to our managers, values are a key part of that for the long term. Values are an essential part of our strategic planning process at TVA. When we decided the values we wanted our corporation to have, we put them in writing along with our vision and our goals. We put them in the company newspaper. We tack them on the walls, on bulletin boards around the company. Our values are simple values such as this: integrity, respect for the individual, teamwork, innovation and continuous improvement, honest communications, leadership, and flexibility. Every TVA executive and manager and every frontline supervisor knows that we expect them to live by these values. And we also know that to get ahead and stay ahead, we must align ourselves with others who share our values, so their way of doing business harmonizes with ours. Now let me restate that. When you're looking for alliances and partnerships, we want companies that share our values so that they fit well with our own people. If you get people with different values doing business with you, it never really fits well. Success is therefore difficult to achieve. In this respect, values clarifies all the choices you make in any amount of change and in any deregulation that may occur. Values clarify the kind of people you hire, the kind of people that you want to work with, that you want to work for. It clarifies the kind of people you associate with. And it certainly clarifies the kind of opportunities you want to take advantage of. Values are the key to sustainable long-term success in life as well as in business. And teaching basic values is a key responsibility for parents and for the university environment. I hear a lot about values-based education. Well, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about graduates of universities who are taught basic values, who are better equipped to deal with uncertainty because they have a compass to follow. Change does not impact people that know what they are and who they are as much as it does people who are unsettled. And I noticed coming into the campus today, there was a saying which I jotted down: the spirit makes the master. Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about, and exactly what a lot of companies are pushing now to get a good workforce for the future. People who can adapt to change. The spirit makes the master. People with a strong set of values have no trouble passing what Jack Welch calls the mirror test, where you look yourself in the mirror every day and feel proud of what you're doing. We're certainly proud of what we're doing at TVA, and we certainly hope that our employees continue to feel that way. While others may be frightened by changes that lie ahead, we're excited about them because we have confidence in ourselves. So especially to those of you who will soon be graduating and beginning careers, I ask you to consider this question: what are your values? Can you pass the mirror test? If you can, I promise you that years from now, you'll look back on your careers with pride and without regret. And I'll end my presentation here with one final quotation. And it came from Thomas Edison. "I never worked a day in my life. It was all fun." Thank you very much.
Good job. Excellent job. Thank you. Well, thank you. That was excellent, and it'd be hard for me to tell you how much I agree with what you've just said. I hope that's where we're headed in Western Kentucky University and what we stand for. Let's spend a few moments and see if you have some questions, whether it deals with the electrical industry, deregulation, or values, or anything. Any questions? Floor is open. Back here?
Back there, I think.
Here, you step over. I'm not going to answer.
Okay.
Doesn't work, just yell real loud. It's not on me.
You say employee training?
Are you offering employee training?
Oh, yeah, I've offered employee training. Yes, as a matter of fact, we are. Just since I've been chairman, we started what we call the TVA University. And what it really is, it's a place at various locations in TVA where we have classrooms, and we have a requirement that all of our employees take a core curriculum of about 100 hours of training, which we will pay for and give the employees time on the job to do that. And the reason we want to do that, we want the employees to be very familiar with their jobs as well as with what the corporation's doing, so they can adapt to change a lot easier than they could if they didn't understand exactly where we were going as decision makers. Now, as part of that, and this is a question that's very dear to my heart, so I may take a couple minutes here and talk about this a second. It is my opinion that in the future, whether or not all of you are going to be responsible for your own careers. You're not going to be able to have a corporation hire you in, promote you every 2 years, give you, move you, train you where you're supposed to be trained, and you retire in 30 years. That's not there any longer. What's going to happen is that you're going to have a lifetime of learning experiences along the way to make yourself valuable for whatever's out there. You're going to be responsible for creating your own value. And what I'm trying to do with the TVA employees is to use the TVA University to, yes, train them for their jobs at TVA, but to offer opportunities for them to get advanced degrees on their own time through a process, through a partnership and alliance with a local university. Because that lifelong learning is important for them. It's also important to us because we get a better employee along the way. And I saw something where the average person is going to change jobs 6 or 7 times. I think you mentioned they change careers they're going to change careers like 3 times their lifetime. Well, when you get out of college, college is just to begin the foundation. There has to be a lifelong commitment to learning and making yourselves valuable for the future. So what we're trying to do with employees is have a very aggressive training program to make ourselves better, make ourselves able to deal with change in an aggressive manner, and have employees who are not as stressed as they normally would be under change, because we're preparing them for the change, but also to have a system in which the employee can take advantage of the opportunities to make themselves better and, yes, more valuable.
Another question? Over here? I hear those TVA University tests are shocking. Shocking.
I haven't had one myself, so I don't know. Yes. Okay, well, we obviously are a nuclear utility, and we're committed to that. Well, the entire country is committed, really. It's, if you look at the statistics, there are 109 nuclear units that are licensed in the country. And we'll end up with 5 of those. And I was looking at these numbers the other day, and it was kind of fascinating to me that 20% of the electric output in the country comes from nuclear in the United States. And TVA is going to have about 20% out of our 5 units. So we're going to have about 20% in the long term. So that kind of component of nuclear is going to be very important to us. So I see us as a nuclear operator, 40, 50 years into the future from a financial standpoint. But I think that we may have the distinction of bringing on the last nuclear unit of this generation, which is our Watts Bar unit near Spring City, Tennessee, which we hope to have fuel loaded this year and operational next year. It remains to be seen whether or not there's going to be another generation of nuclear units in the future. The Japanese are experimenting with some things now, and I think it just depends on what kind of units they are. I think that there are a couple of essential things I think are going to be important for the nuclear industry if it succeeds in another generation of nuclear plants. And one is going to be standardization of design so people can determine what the cost is going to be right up front. And secondly, I think they'll be smaller so that they can be constructed and put in locations much easier than they are now. They're base-loaded plants now, very large and very complicated. That's going to have to change. We don't see any new jobs being created. You're talking about from TVA hiring new people? We don't see, we're at about 16,500, and I think that's where it's going to stay, right about, may fluctuate some. But we've gone through a major downsizing from 34,000 to 16,500 in a little over 7 years, almost 8 years. And so we finished the downsizing. I see the 16,500 being a pretty steady number. You know, change a little bit, a few hundred here and there maybe, but the unit we have under construction, ready for operations, of course we have construction people we're not going to need. Then we have to have operating people, so you just have may have a switch in talent a little bit, but not necessarily a switch in numbers.
Any questions? Yes.
The competitors, well, we have competitors now all around us. Southern Company, APCO, you know, those, all the utilities that surround us are now competing with us in a monopoly situation. And what I mean by compete, if we're trying to get a factory to locate, say in Bowling Green, and another site they're looking at is in Alabama Power's territory, then there's competition to try to get the prices right so we can get the plant here instead of there. So we are competing head-to-head now on location and retention of existing industries. Now, when deregulation occurs, the monopolies go away, and then you may be competing across the lines for directly for their customers. That has not occurred yet. Right now, the competition is limited within the defined territories. But as time goes on, it'll be everyone around us, and eventually, with deregulation, it'd be anybody in the country, basically. I'll answer your question two ways. One is I would see fewer utility companies. I'd see more mergers of the generating utilities. I would see more companies coming in, independent power producers who are building smaller generating units to try to locate in different places. So it may cause a proliferation of independent power producers on one hand and probably fewer utilities on the other. So it may come both ways depending on how you look at it and how you define it. Yes. Well, the land between the lakes, and maybe I didn't make this clear in my facts that I recited to you earlier. 98% of our budget comes from power revenues. When I say power revenues, I mean the revenue we get from selling electricity. 98% of our money comes from that. There's 2% that's appropriated from Congress in tax dollars that goes for specific purposes, such as managing the 650-mile river system. We're the only corporation that I know of in the world that has a mandate from Congress to manage an entire river system, the Tennessee River. But we have the mandate to do it. We get some $70 to $80 million a year to manage that. And then we get the land between the lakes just happens to be a national recreation area that is managed and funded through the tax dollars. That's the 2% that we do, of the work we do. And land between the lakes is averaged between 5, 6, 7 million a year in tax dollars to operate. I think we have 5 million next year earmarked for that activity. So I'm giving you a long answer to your question, but what I think will happen with land between the lakes in the long term, what I'd like to see happen, is to have public-private partnerships and to try to make it a self-sustaining facility in the long term. If you can get some partnerships in there and generate revenue, you can manage that without tax dollars. So I personally would like to see land between the lakes become self-sufficient, so we don't need tax dollars for it. And that's consistent with the trends that are going on in the rest of the recreational areas around the country. And basically what that trend is that in times past, like national parks, taxpayers paid the money if anybody used them and wanted to. There's been a shift to say, well, those who use them ought to pay for them. Those who don't use them shouldn't pay for them. And that's what the shift is all about. Yes. We felt like we had to hold the rate stable in order to stay competitive and to create an environment where we can be competitive in a deregulated environment. And that's what's really driving that. And our hope is to continue that for 10 years. Our goal is to go 10 years without a rate increase. And that's all driven by competition. Precisely, there's be no other reason to drive it that way except for that. And to encourage economic development, obviously. But that's competition. If you look at it in the sense I was describing earlier, we'd like to attract all the industry here away from our competitors, so our rates impact competition that way. Yes. I think it will come to that point. I'm not sure at what level it may come to. I'm not sure a homeowner is going to be in a position to do that. Large industries, I think, will be buying their power from companies across the country and having it sending over transmission lines and paying fees for that. I think that is what's going to, the wholesale market is really going to be the part of the business that's going to open up. And in England, when they essentially privatized and deregulated their electric utilities over there, they had about 50% of their customers that didn't care one way or the other about it. They had about another 25% who spent a little time checking around, see what it was, and then stayed where they were. And they only had 25% that really seriously considered changing. So in their experience, they had 75% of their customers didn't pay that much attention to it. And I expect that that's pretty much the way things would happen here. But the 25%, I think, will be the larger, more sophisticated users of power who have the access to the computers and things to make those choices, because those things can become very complicated and very costly if the wrong decisions made by these companies.
Maybe one more here.
Yeah.
In some deregulation situations, in some industries that deregulate, there has been concerns about job security and worker safety. And I was wondering how TVA plans to address these issues when it comes to the deregulation that you're going to be going through.
That was one of the things I was talking about earlier about trying to prepare people for change themselves. A person got to be responsible for their own careers more and more as time goes on. The company, the entitlement that people feel that they're entitled to the job that they have is going to continually erode over time. And we have a lot of people at TVA who feel like they're entitled to their jobs and that we owe it to them because they worked there a while, and they say, well, I've given you this much of my life and you owe me this job. Well, what we're trying to do with the TVA University and others is to try to help those employees understand that they've got to share the burden with me. I can give them the resources and help they need to be good productive people and well-educated and well-skilled people, but they've got to give me back something too. They've got to give me back the shared responsibility of it. And that's really a tough thing to do in an industry like the utility industry, where it's been, as I said, sort of unexciting, sort of stayed and sort of, there, and quite frankly, probably too fat over the years, and it's hard to get that entitlement out of there. So I keep trying to get the employees to help me with it, because I'll help employees, but they've got to give me something back, and that may mean, going to school at night or on weekends to get a master's degree or something. I mean, there may be, something, and that, I know they maybe would rather be home or at a ball game or something, but they might need to be in a classroom somewhere. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do, is to get that point across and drive that home to the employees. Well, I think it's very, very important to all of you to, and to our own employees at TVA, to think about the value you create yourselves for the future. You may not have somebody out there, a big corporation, that's going to take care of you like they did in the old days.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You did good. Now, on behalf of the outstanding students, faculty, and staff here, we want you to take a little something from Western Kentucky University to remember your stay. We're going to put him in a sweatshirt so you can remember Western. Thank all of you for coming. Thank you.
Thank you. My son-in-law will fight me over
Yeah,
that.
I knew he would. We'd like to get a copy of your speech, if at all possible.
Yeah, that was one.
Great. That's be good.
I
We
enjoyed
like to
that
keep
very
it.
much.